Elias Corbin had built his empire with discipline so rigid that even his reflection seemed afraid to disappoint him. At 36, he was one of the youngest CEOs in the city to run a global logistics firm, but success had carved its price into his days, late nights, early mornings, and a loneliness he'd grown too accustomed to. His employees whispered about his coldness, his strict posture, his precise words. But no one understood that silence had once been a shield he learned to use out of necessity, not pride. That January evening, wind hissed against the tall glass walls of Corbin Tower as the last employees hurried out. A winter storm had iced the streets unexpectedly, and people were rushing home. Elias remained behind, reviewing contracts, tapping his pen rhythmically until the lights flickered once subtle, almost imperceptible. He frowned. The power grid rarely faltered in the building. He stood from his desk, stretching his tense shoulders. Just as he prepared to return to the documents, he heard something faint, a sound so soft he thought he imagined it, a sniffle, then a shaky exhale. Someone was still here. Elias followed the sound down the hallway and toward the service corridor. Most executives never set foot there, but Elias had never minded walking through the less glamorous parts of his company. The corridor smelled faintly of cleaning solution and cement dust. The further he walked, the clearer the sound became, small trembling breaths. He reached the storage room door, slightly ajar, and pushed it gently. Inside, illuminated by a single weak bulb, sat a girl, 16, maybe 17. Knees pulled to her chest, arms wrapped tightly around them, chin buried in her sleeves. Her thin uniform sweater wasn't meant for winter, and her shoulders shook from the cold. Dark hair stuck to her cheeks, and her eyes, when she finally looked up, were wide with a mixture of embarrassment and fear. Elias paused, the heaviness in his chest unexpected. "I'm sorry," she whispered immediately, as if apologizing for her existence. "I didn't mean to be here, her voice cracked. "I just needed somewhere warm." Her fingers were red from the cold, and her breath came out in shaky clouds in the frigid air. Elias scanned the room, no heater, no blankets, no sign that she had any reason to be in a place this cold. "What's your name?" he asked softly, careful not to let his voice carry its usual stern edge. She hesitated. "Lena." "And why are you here, Lena?" Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. My mother is the night janitor. She started a double shift today because someone called in sick. The storm made everything slower. She said to stay in the cafeteria, but they close it early now." She wiped her nose quickly with the back of her hand. "I didn't want to get her in trouble, so I came here." Elias felt an emotion he rarely allowed himself to acknowledge. Guilt. This was his building, his rules, his responsibility. "How long have you been in here?" he asked gently. She exhaled shakily. "Since 5?" She glanced at the clock. It was almost 8, 3 hours in freezing air, alone. He stepped closer, removing his coat without a second thought. It was warm, heavy, tailored from the kind of wool most people never touched. When he draped it around her shoulders, she flinched, startled by the gesture. "You're freezing," he said. "You should have told someone." Her eyes shimmered with something like shame. "People don't really listen when we talk. They just tell us where not to be." That sentence landed like a stone in Elias's chest. How many times had he walked past his own staff without looking closely? How many realities unfolded just outside his line of sight? Lena shivered again. though the coat enveloped her like a protective shield. She looked up at him properly now, really looked, and in that single moment, something inside him shifted. Her eyes carried a quiet resilience, a soft determination that felt older than her years. There was an honesty there, a kind of unfiltered truth he rarely encountered in boardrooms and negotiations. One look from her tired, vulnerable, brave, made something in his carefully guarded world quiver. "Come with me," Elias said gently. "You shouldn't be here another minute." She hesitated. "I don't want to cause trouble." "You're not," he assured her. "I promise." He offered his hand. Lena stared at it, unsure, then slowly reached out. Her fingers were icy against his palm, and instinctively, he tightened his grip just slightly to reassure, not restrain. He led her through the hallway, their steps echoing softly. As they walked, she kept looking around as if expecting someone to shout at her. Elias noticed every flinch, every cautious glance. It was the look of someone who had learned to survive by being invisible. The elevator doors opened and they stepped inside. Lena pressed herself to the corner, holding his coat tightly around herself. "You don't need to be afraid," Elias said, keeping his voice soft. "I'm not afraid," she replied quietly. "I'm just not used to anyone noticing." The elevator chimed and the doors slid open to the executive lounge on the 40th floor. A warm, quiet room most employees never saw. A fireplace flickered near the wall. Plush chairs sat around a large window overlooking the storm-darkened city. Lena froze at the entrance. I shouldn't be here." "You should be somewhere warm and safe," Elias said. "Right now, that's here." He guided her toward the fireplace, adjusting the coat to wrap more securely around her. She sat slowly, almost reverently, as though the chair might vanish if she moved too quickly. Elias brought her a cup of hot tea from the nearby service counter. When he set it in her hands, she exhaled shakily, the rising steam fogging her glasses. "Thank you," she whispered. "Really." The sincerity in her voice struck him again, quiet, unpolished, pure. He sat across from her, observing the way warmth slowly returned to her cheeks. She looked younger when she wasn't shivering, softer. But there was something else in her eyes now, a mix of gratitude and disbelief. "Does your mother know where you are?" he asked. "No, she thinks I'm sleeping in the cafeteria. She'd be scared if she knew I was bothering her boss." "You're not bothering me," Elias said firmly. "Not even a little." Lena blinked, as if the concept didn't quite register. Outside, snow fell in heavy sheets against the glass. Inside, the room glowed with amber warmth. For the first time in a long while, Elias felt something shift inside him. Something human. Something awake. He didn't know it yet, but this moment, this chance encounter in a cold storage room, would unravel truths he'd buried, awaken parts of himself he thought he'd lost, and change the path of both their lives in ways neither could imagine. Lena sipped her tea, hands wrapped around the cup as if it were a lifeline. Elias watched her breathe in unsteady intervals, still shaken from the cold but gradually settling. Her clothes were thin, meant for summer shifts, and her shoes were worn along the seams. She wasn't neglected, just surviving in a world that noticed her only when it was convenient. "Do you come here often with your mother?" Elias asked. Lena shook her head. "Only during school breaks. I help her sometimes, when she lets me." "You shouldn't have to," he said gently. She shrugged with a small, rueful smile. "Bills like to fight harder than we do." That answer, simple yet heavy, pressed against him. He'd spent years building wealth to outrun the struggles of his past, yet here sat a girl still locked inside the life he'd escaped. "Does anyone know you're here this late?" he asked. "No, I didn't want to walk home alone during the storm, and I didn't want to bother Mom. She's already tired." Elias understood exhaustion, the kind that seeped into bones, the kind you carried even in silence. "You won't have to hide in storage rooms anymore," he said quietly, surprising even himself, with the promise forming before he fully processed it. Lena lifted her eyes to him, searching his expression. Why are you being so kind?" No one had asked him that in years. "Because you deserved warmth tonight, and because I should have made sure my building was a place where no one was left to freeze." He paused. "I'm sorry you had to go through that." Her eyes softened. That look again, gentle, honest, disarming. A look that made his carefully erected walls tremble. "Most people don't apologize to people like us," she whispered. "Then most people are wrong." For a moment, silence settled between them, warm instead of cold. Lena leaned back in the chair, exhaustion pulling at her eyelids. "I didn't mean to make trouble," she murmured again. "You didn't," he assured, "but I will make changes after tonight." Her head tilted slightly. "Changes?" He nodded. "No more locked cafeterias during night shifts, heating checks in service corridors, a designated space for staff families during storms." He paused, glancing at her. "No one should feel invisible under my roof." Lena stared at him, a small, astonished smile forming. "You really mean that?" "I do." The clock chimed softly. Her breathing had steadied. The color in her cheeks had returned. "Your mother must be nearing her break," Elias said. "Would you like me to take you to her?" Lena nodded, standing slowly, still wrapped in his coat. She looked warmer, safer, seen. As they walked toward the elevator, she glanced at him shyly. "Thank you for noticing." Elias inhaled deeply, feeling the quiet truth of her words sink into him. It wasn't just that he'd noticed her. It was that one look from her had made him really see everything he'd been blind to for far too long.